All right, here's the point. He represented Acorn in a lawsuit. He taught classes to future leaders of Acorn. We know that. We know that, in fact, the Obama campaign gave Acorn $800,000 for Get Out the Vote efforts.
And misidentified it on their election forms.
And misidentified it. And we know that while he was serving on the Woods Fund with his unrepentant terrorist buddy Bill Ayers, Acorn received thousands of dollars in grants from the Woods Fund.
Look, I only want one thing from Barack Obama. Acorn has clearly violated the law. Clearly, their former employees and their current employees say it's not just lower-level people, it's higher-ups. In Nevada, Sean, they hired people who were felons from a work-release program from the local prison to supervise their voter registrations, including people who were guilty of identity theft.
So Barack Obama...
If you're hiring people guilty of identity theft and voter registrations, you're hiring specialists. Barack Obama should simply say, Acorn has stepped over the line, despite the fact I worked with him in the past.
Well, they gave him money. They gave him $800,000.
Well, that's why he won't do it. The point is, all Barack Obama has to do to put this matter to rest is say Acorn was wrong, and he won't do that.
But when he writes, when he had on his website, Barack Obama never organized with Acorn, he lied.
It's not true.
All right, do you believe that, for example, he lied that he didn't know Jeremiah Wright was controversial? Is that a lie?
There's a whole pattern here. But Barack Obama can clear this up by simply saying, look, I worked with these people, but they've gone off the rails. Maybe their new leadership is worse than their old leadership. He won't do that because he depends on Acorn to get out the vote for him in 3 weeks. Look, that's why he can't criticize
Governor Palin put out an email saying, you know what, we can't allow leftist groups like Acorn to steal this election. Acorn has been cited in all the swing states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina. Is Acorn systematically trying to stuff the ballot box and steal this election?
I don't know, but I have my suspicions. I do know this. Barack Obama, despite all of these scandals, and despite the fact that he has close ties to Acorn, will not criticize them. Instead, he attacks the people who are going after Acorn,
he has a pattern,
including Democrats who are trying to reform them.
But his pattern is he denies associations when his associations are deep. In the case of Ayers,
when they're embarrassing.
Wright, Flager, and Acorn.
And when they're embarrassing.
So he's dishonest. Come on, John, yes or no?
You don't have to agree with him, John. Let me just
you can say no.
The facts that Barack Obama lays out regarding Acorn are false.
So he's dishonest?
He's not telling the truth.
What fact is false?
Excuse me, it's my time. When he said in the beginning that he never organized with Acorn and gave him $800,000.
There's with Acorn, a community organization group that came up in the debate and are not going away. Is a part of. I'm sorry.
No, I want to. Actually, we have that bite of what John McCain said during the debate and what Sarah Palin said today. Let's play it, and then you can talk to us a little bit about it.
We need to know the full extent of Senator Obama's relationship with Acorn, who is now on the verge of maybe perpetrating one of the greatest frauds in voter history in this country, maybe destroying the fabric of democracy.
In this election, especially here in Ohio, you're going to be asked to choose between a candidate who will not disavow a group committing voter fraud and a leader who will not tolerate it.
Well, it is Acorn season. I mean, it's October. So, you know,
well, what is it? Explain this.
Acorn is an organization that was started in the 1960s as a welfare rights organization. It stands for the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. It basically lobbies for the rights and benefits for low and moderate income people. And it does a lot of voter registration because groups pay it to do voter registration. And over the last couple of months and years, it's been found to have engaged in shoddy, and sometimes fraudulent practices. And recently, a number of states and now a federal probe are underway to see whether, as they go around, and they've registered 1.3 million, mostly in swing states, a lot of the registration cards are duplicative or fraudulent. Mickey Mouse, you know, Tony Roma, I think Batman was registered. Now, setting aside the question of whether someone named Batman showing up at your polling place could actually get a voting card, I think it's important to keep in mind here the difference between voter fraud, which are people voting fraudulently, and voter registration fraud, which is people registering fraudulently. Both have a great tradition. One is much more common than the other. Basically, it's a standard Republican play at this point to try to, you know, meld the two, not only to get your base up, but to also lay the predicate in case you want to contest the election, or if you lose the election, maybe contest the presidency.
We've been hearing these charges from Republicans for years now, and the Democrats claim that this is some kind of a conspiracy by the Republican Party to disenfranchise people. Can you sort that out?
It's an interesting argument. Basically, Democrats say that if you claim voter fraud in America, you're effectively engaging in voter suppression. Because if you say, I'm going to go after everyone who's registered, or I don't like the way you've registered, or you have to show a voter ID or a social security number, you're by saying that and putting that out.
But Mike, that's in fact what happened during the 1960s.
Well, absolutely. This is an old trick.
Right.
And Democrats have begun to fire back, become much more aggressive about this in the last couple of years and say, just raising voter fraud is a form of suppression. This today, Obama's campaign general counsel sent a letter to the Attorney General saying, just by leaking, as someone in the Justice Department obviously did, leaking the fact of an FBI investigation into Acorn this week, they were engaging in the same kind of voter suppression that occurred in the past. And I'll say one more thing. You all remember the famous case in 2006 of the 9 U.S. attorneys who were fired by the Justice Department. One of the 9 was fired because he did not investigate, partially he was fired because he did not investigate, he did not prosecute an Acorn investigation.
Stuffing ballot boxes. That's what you might call retail fraud. You know, that's old-fashioned voter fraud of the kind that we are now being told thunderously is reached epidemic proportions, and that Acorn is the main culprit.
What do you make of the Acorn case? I mean, even as we are talking, there's an investigation. The Department of Justice, the FBI, has started investigating Acorn. Fox News has been beating the Acorn issue over and again for the last week or so. John McCain brought it up Wednesday night in his debate with Obama, tried to tie Obama to Acorn. What do you make of the Acorn controversy?
Well, I make of it what it is. It is a first-class propaganda drive. The entities you've mentioned are all participating in it. Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, John McCain, the McCain campaign, despite the inconvenient fact that John McCain gave the keynote speech at Acorn's annual conference in 2006. But we won't talk about that. The fact is that what we're hearing about Acorn is, without exception, false. It is false. Acorn itself flagged the suspicious voter registration forms that caused this whole thing to begin in Las Vegas about 10 days ago. It brought those forms to the attention of the Secretary of State, who then turned around and said, aha, evidence that you're conspiring to commit voter fraud. Well, filling out voter registration forms dishonestly to pick up a couple of bucks, which is what the Acorn volunteers had done, is not voter fraud. What Acorn does is it pays people to register others. So naturally, there are people who will turn in funny forms because that's the incentive system. That's a way to make up a couple of bucks. And that's why Acorn has been quite scrupulous over the years in going through these forms and then turning in the ones that strike them as suspicious.
It has done that. I mean, Acorn admits that some of these registration cards are problematic, such as the name Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is registered, and Acorn has pointed that out. The entire Dallas Cowboy football team was registered in Las Vegas, Nevada. So that part of the argument is true, right? Some people do fill out bogus registration cards.
Yeah, and Acorn turns them in. That's the point I'm making. These are infractions by grassroots volunteers who do the wrong thing. That's not voter fraud, however. Voter fraud would be if somebody showed up to vote and said, hi, I'm Mickey Mouse, may I vote now? That's not going on.
Does that happen very often?
It never happens. Let's just talk statistically about this, okay? As of 2007, the Department of Justice had prosecuted, are you ready for this number? 120 cases of voter fraud.
Over what period?
Over, well, it was like 4 years, okay? 120 cases. And there were 82 convictions. Now, I think the Republic will probably withstand that attack, right? We're talking about voter fraud that's being perpetrated in the tens. And I can tell you, moreover, that not one of those cases of fraud actually involved a person showing up to vote improperly. There were other kinds of fraud, you know, election judges breaking the law and so on. The point I'm making to you here, Bill, and this is the most important thing I'm going to say to you tonight, is that this is a pretext being used by a party, okay, that is itself committing election fraud and vote suppression on an enormous scale. In other words, we have a party that is itself engaged in disenfranchising, actively disenfranchising millions of Americans. It is itself complaining about a group that is supposedly planning to do the same thing, but that isn't doing that at all.
What's the evidence that, say, the Republican Party is disenfranchising millions of people?
Well, first of all of the